You know, my voice is getting tired, so I'm going to use this thing. We started out this morning in Sterling, so we got out to Sterling, and then we've done this will be our 5th or 6th stop. We got one more today, and then we start going west, and so we're going to do the southern Colorado tomorrow. I feel a little bit like a crumpled up wash rag thrown in the sink. First, I want to thank you all for being here. You know, I got into this business, thank you, Tyler. I got into this business kind of accidentally. You know, I was a geologist and got laid off and ended up, I mean, I never ran for student council or class president or anything. And all my customers thought everybody was a bum. Every congressman, every mayor. And it sort of, I kept saying, well, then you ought to do something, right? We are the original experiment in democracy. And you ought to get at it. And of course they never would. They just said, you ought to do it. You're the big mouth. And because I was always the big mouth, because if you keep them talking, then they might buy a dessert. And then you could always make a little extra profit on dessert in the restaurant business. Anyway, you know, somehow I got conned, you know, talked into running for mayor. I did that. And then this whole governor thing happened. And the focus was really to try to, you know, I've never been involved in politics, so I'm not, despite what people may say, I've never been that partisan. I never was involved in politics before. My mom was all my grandparents were Republicans, all my aunts and uncles were Republicans, but my mom was widowed twice. So her dad, very conservative man, but her first husband died in the war. She had 2 kids, and she met my dad and married him and had 2 more kids. He died in 1960 when I was just turned 8. So she had to raise 4 kids, and she felt government should be smaller, but that it had to work. So she raised 4 Democrats, drove my grandparents nuts. But we're pretty conservative Democrats, and a lot of people think, you know, people question whether I'm a Republican or why I am. Anyway, this whole point of coming down here is to try and get your input back on issues and things that we should be doing better. And I brought several cabinet with me. I got Mike King, who's the head of the Department of Natural Resources, back there in the blue shirt, standing there. John Stolp, I know some of you know, he's from down these parts. He's kind of helps me everything around water. He is, you know, helping us create a state water plan for the first time in history. And I'm now the chair of what's called the Western Governors Association. We're going to try and get all the Western governors, and they pretty much all agreed to this, to take all of our plans and create a regional plan, because it really is all interconnected. Anyway, there's an awful lot of divisiveness this last session in the legislature. You know, it was difficult because I got into this stuff just to try and bring people together, not to drive them apart. And it's funny, my son, who just turned 11, we got into this big fight. And he was saying, well, Dad, what do you do so hard? What's so hard that you do at work every day? Make decisions? He says, Dad, get the facts, make a decision, check, next. I said, well, tell you, it's hard. He said, no, Dad, get the facts, make a decision, check, next. And he goes, every day I got to go into school and I've got to learn something completely new. If I don't get it right, the next day is miserable because everything's based on the day before. You know, after about 20 minutes of this, I gave in. I said, you're right. Being in 5th grade is harder than being the governor. Right? But the next day, when I had a chance to think about it, the real problem is we don't all use the same facts, right? And that's a big part of what makes these decisions difficult, controversial, and divisive, is we don't come together with the same facts. And so one example of that would be when we did gun safety, and we did the universal background checks. And there are an awful lot of people that still come up to me, and they say, and I heard this again and again and again and again, why are you making honest, law-abiding citizens get a background check and waste their money when no criminal's going to go get a background check? What do you think, they're idiots? Right? And after I heard this enough, I went, had Jim Davis, who's a former special agent in charge of the FBI for the Rocky Mountains, I asked him to go and get me the facts. In 2012, we got to half of the gun purchases. We're trying to go become universal, get to all of them. What, did we stop anybody, or were we wasting everybody's time? So these are the facts. So in 2012, slightly over half the gun purchases there were 38 people in Colorado convicted or accused, and they're almost all convicted. A couple people still going through trial, but 38 people convicted of homicide who tried to buy a gun. 133 people were convicted of sexual assault. Again, a couple were still under trial. There were 620 burglars, convicted burglars who tried to buy a gun. There were 1,300 people convicted of felony assault. That's when someone goes to the hospital. Wow. They tried to buy a gun. And then there were 420 people who had a judicial restraining order, right? They weren't allowed to go see their girlfriend. They weren't allowed to get near their boyfriend or their old partner. And they were trying to buy a gun, and we stopped them. And just in case you really don't think criminals are stupid, and these are the facts, 236 people, when they showed up to pick up their new gun, we arrested them for an outstanding warrant for a violent crime, right? And once I saw those facts, I said, it's not about Republicans or Democrats. We've got an obligation to keep, and again, some of these crooks are going to go, the criminals are going to go out and buy a gun somewhere else, but we've got an obligation to try and keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. The other one, obviously a big battle over the capital punishment and that Chuck E. Cheese. No, and I don't ever use the guy's name. I think we make celebrities out of these cold-blooded killers. And there's no question about that. But when you sit there and go back and get the facts, it turns out this kid was severely bipolar. And there's no question about that now. It never came out in the trial. But, you know, after 15 years, they finally got him on, there's Reeves Brown, head of Department of Local Affairs. Reeves, thanks for getting here. He's always putting out the fires when I leave these things. You know, they got me doing so many stops that usually if somebody really angry, he has to go make sure that he shows them the love. We appreciate that. Anyway, this guy was severely bipolar. He was, I don't care about those lives, I don't care about my life. And after he'd done all his appeals, the lawyers kept telling him, you got to show remorse. He never showed remorse. They got him on medication in 2005. In a week, he changed. Became a different person, totally remorseful. Too late to help him, but wrote letters to the families and stuff. And you know, to do a capital punishment, you need 12 out of 12 jurors have to say that they vote for a capital punishment, right? And 4 of the jurors, they got to, I think the defense attorneys found nine of the jurors. I don't think they found all 12, but of the 9, they got 4 of them to say if we had known he was severely bipolar, it would have changed. It would have made a difference. It would have changed the way we looked at this case. And to me, that means you just don't go off and execute someone who's got severe mental questions about his capacity. Doesn't mean you let him loose, right? He's going to be in prison for the rest of his life without parole. Now, once you get into this, you find some different facts that I never knew. I didn't know this. So we spent almost $18 million on this case. All the appeals. This is like almost each one of these capital punishment cases are all over $12 or $14 million. Most of them get up to $16 or $18 million. For $2 million, you put somebody in life, you put him in prison for life without parole. That's $2 million. So it costs almost 10 times more money. First fact. Second fact, and I never knew this, there is no deterrence, right? So you would think if you have a death penalty, you'd have less murders. It's not the case. There are 35 studies out there trying to find that. Not one study demonstrates any deterrence. A state like Texas, which has had 500 executions in the last 75 years, they have no fewer homicides, no fewer mass murders than states that got rid of the death penalty 50 years ago. And that's, even when you adjust it for poverty or low-income communities, there's just no deterrence. And you talk to almost any district attorney, they'll admit that. And then the third part, this was the hardest one for me of all. And I'm not, I think I'm probably, in terms of my religious values, I'm about average. I'm not more religious than somebody else. My dad was a Sunday school teacher, but I went, and I think I have to do this, I went and met with the families of all the victims, the 4 victims that were killed in Chuck E. Cheese. And they were about evenly divided, right? Of course, half of them wanted the kid to be executed, but the other half, and they were mixed, there were Catholics, and there were some of them were evangelical, and they felt that the Bible was all about, the Old Testament was all about eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but what really made the Bible was the New Testament. And that there's no eye for an eye in the New Testament. It's all about forgiveness and redemption, and Jesus gave his life so that we can learn to forgive. Only Jesus, or only God can make the decision to take a life. It's throughout that whole thing. And they were trying to get to the point where they could forgive this kid who killed their daughter, or their sister, or their cousin in one case. They were trying to get there, and they were fighting and working to do it, and it became a big part of their healing process, was trying to work to forgive this guy. Right? And if we execute him, they can't do it. They're locked out, right? They can never get closure. And so they're sitting there saying they don't want an execution, right? So, and I'm not saying one's right or wrong, I'm just saying if it costs 10 times more money and there's no deterrence and it doesn't actually bring closure to the families of victims, shouldn't we think about it a second time? I mean, I didn't know those facts. And you begin to see why over the last 40 years, every country in Europe has gotten rid of the death penalty. It's too expensive. You get mistakes made no matter how good you work at it, and in the end, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, right? It doesn't bring closure, and it's not a deterrent. There's, in this hemisphere, South America, Mexico, Canada, the only other country that still has the death penalty is Guatemala. New Zealand doesn't have it. Australia, Israel doesn't have the death penalty. And I just, you know, and we didn't repeal the death penalty. I think people, we should get the facts out there and see if people change. If they don't change, we should keep the death penalty. And I did not give this killer clemency for a very specific reason. If people really feel, once they hear all the facts, that he still should die, even though he's got these severe disabilities, the voice of the people, once they get the facts, that opportunity will still be out there. But it's hard to get those facts out in newspapers or TV because what they want to do is sensationalize everything. Anyway, those are two of the big cases. 252, the renewable energy statute, which I know affects a lot of people in this part of the world. And I am, again, with John Stull, you know, on our staff, I hear very clearly what this drought's been like and how difficult it's been for everybody. In this part, it's been the whole state, but especially in this part of the state. But 252, the real point of 252 was to, and you didn't see all the good stuff that was in it. It never brought up in the newspapers, right? There's taking waste to energy, so things like old piles of rubber tires, which you couldn't burn and turn into electricity in the old days. And there was a bunch of companies that want to do this. They're willing to invest like $35 million in rural communities to get this energy. We couldn't get that through any other way through the legislature, between the different conflicts and the partisan nonsense. But we got it into this bill. On the west slope, where they have coal mines, that methane doesn't qualify for burning that clean methane that's a waste. Right now it's coming out of the coal mines and just venting up into the atmosphere. We couldn't use that. And the real bottom line is, I mean, it's 2%. We've got a task force right now making sure the language is right. I have a commitment from the legislature that they'll change anything, tighten it if it needs to be changed. But it's 2%, not cumulative, right? So that no one's electrical bill by 2020, by 70, and Tracy Bentley is here, our new legislative director. Tracy, raise your hand. So she grew up on a ranch outside Del Norte, knows something about hot, dry summers. She's been at that task force, and there is consensus with the majority of the people on that task force represent agricultural interests, and that this is not cumulative. It's 2% over at the end of 7 years. You won't be paying more than 2% more than what you would be if there was no renewable energy statute. And we need that diversity of energy, right? If you look at your electrical bills, and even if you watch irrigation, you go back 10 years ago and look at your bills, and we've done this with John Salazar, who was with us this morning. Most people's electrical bills are up somewhere between 40 and 50% over the last 10 years. So 2% on top of that is a pretty small number. And I look at part of it as I mean, I know that most people in this room don't believe in you know, the climate change is, and I'm not sure, they haven't convinced me absolutely it's happening. But there are an awful lot of very smart people that don't have an axe to grind, that they're terrifically worried about it. And in the same way that I don't think my house is ever going to burn down, I'm not going to have an electrical fire in my house, I spend 0.5% of what the value of my house is every year on insurance, just in case. And what if those guys are right? I'm just saying 20 years from now, all people would say, you know, you shouldn't have insurance, it's not happening. You know, I'm not that good a scientist that I can say that one way or the other. But adding on 2% so that at least we have a head start and have a foundation built that if climate really is changing, every study that we see shows that we get a drought shadow coming off the mountains. Every climate change study shows that Colorado will get less precipitation. It'll come later in the year, and more will be in terms of rain and not in terms of snow. Half of our reservoir capacity is in the snowpack, right? So if it comes as rain, we don't get as much snowpack and we have less of it. Who is that more important to in the state of Colorado than ranchers and farmers, right? Who does what? I mean, without question. And all the front range, so Colorado Springs, Denver, and Fort Collins, they're already at a 30% renewable energy with the same 2% cap, right? And this was a way to try and say, all right, let's allow us to take waste to energy. Let's make sure that we have, wind energy right now. And you've got some of the best wind farms in the state of Colorado down here. That stuff is almost as inexpensive as coal now. And who knows what happens if the federal government comes out and says, you're going to have to put more scrubbers on your coal plant. All of a sudden, your coal energy, China starts burning more coal, which has been happening over the last 6 or 8 years. Those prices go up. How do we know that cost isn't going to just come along and be much greater than if we've had some more wind energy? We're not going to have all wind energy. But I think 20% of renewable energy is probably not a bad target to give us some. You don't want to all your eggs in one basket. So anyway, those are the 3 issues that I think were the most divisive. I'm going to hear about some more here in a second. Let me ask if you guys got any questions you want to ask me.
Go ahead. Most definitely. I suspected there would be some questions.
My name is Ernie Felzine, and 25 years ago, I moved to Baca County from Aurora because I believed that Baca County more represented the values that I shared. Conservative values, hard work, personal determination, personal sacrifice, living the life of being a washed rag every day. We moved down here, and 18 years I ran a construction company. The last 6 years, my wife and I have purchased the Evermont Home Center up the street. In the last 6 years, we've grown from 13 employees to 18 employees. So I know a little bit about how to grow and how to build a business. And my question is to you, with the growing gap of America growing between the White House and Main Street and the Capitol and the Plains, how do you propose a $9 an hour minimum wage is going to help me and my wife go into the future? Because it is very tough.
Okay, and that's, you're coming to the wrong person. I can't change that, right? But I had at the height of we at one point had 14 restaurants. We opened these always in historic buildings in downtowns around. We did Omaha and Green Bay, Wisconsin. We had, I think, about 1,100 employees, and I fully understand even 25 cents an hour, 50 cents an hour. Suddenly you've got a competitive issue that you've got to deal with. You've got to figure out how can I find, and you're already spending all your time trying to figure out how can I cut costs, how can I do more. I think what you're talking about is a larger issue in terms of how in touch is Washington with the rest of the United States of America. And it's not just the White House, it's Congress. And the partisanship, the attack ads people use on these campaigns, and I practice what I've never done an attack ad. Never had one done for me. We have constantly, when I was in the restaurant business, you learn in the first month that no matter how, you may think that customer's unreasonable, but you better pay attention to them and listen to them and respect them, because if you don't, they're going to go out and trash your reputation. You won't hear about it for a couple of months by the time it gets back to you, and the damage is already done. These elected officials, generally, they feel that by putting down the other person, they're raising themselves up. They think they're making themselves better, and it makes it awful hard to get anything done, to find compromise, right? You're never going to get everything you want, right? It's just, the world doesn't work that way. And I think the attack ads are a big part of that. It's like you never see Coca-Cola doing an attack ad against Pepsi, because it works. It appeals to your emotions, right? It's something that viscerally feels a little bit like the death penalty. It's an emotional issue for a lot of people. But if Coke did an attack ad against Pepsi, Pepsi sales would go down, but then Pepsi would counterattack and do an attack ad against Coke. And then Coke's sales would go down, then they get in this battle, and they would depress sales in the soft drink category. What we're doing is we're suppressing sales in the category of democracy, right? And that's, I think, where a lot of this separation between Washington and what we're trying to do here, and then part of what they can't do in Washington is why I asked and I'm so grateful that you guys are all giving me some of your day and asking me questions. I don't know if that minimum wage a federal law or is that the state one that escalates up?
That's one that Obama is putting out there as in his next session, that it will be at $9 an hour. We've already got, Colorado already has a higher rate than the standard minimum wage. But
it's indexed to inflation, so it marches along. Well, as close as I can tell, nothing's going to pass in Washington anymore anyway, so I don't think you have too much to worry about. I don't know. Maybe that's not all. Maybe that's not all bad then, right? What else?
Rural CDOT money is being siphoned off of our rural roads and taken upstate to the interstates. If you go to Trinidad, take 160.
Yeah.
Watch the shoulders. There
Okay.
is none.
Okay, I'll do that. John, what was the road you were showing me? What was that? Which highway is that?
We just come down 287, but we're going on 160.
So we'll look at 160, but 287 is what.
Do it in a pickup.
If I only could.
Not a sedan.
287, that's a beautiful road, right? That's nice concrete work. I mean, I'm a geologist, but I spend a lot of time looking at how stuff gets built. And that is as nice a road as you're going to see anywhere in the state. It is absolutely smooth. It looks like it's going to be there for a long time. Looks like they put a lot of steel into the concrete. So I will check into that. I will tell you that people in metropolitan Denver think that all the money's going out to the rural Colorado and that they're getting gypped. So what I asked Don Hunt, the guy who runs CDOT now, it's a guy named Don Hunt, and he, if there's one, I've never had experience in politics, so that's why I make a number of mistakes that I had to go out. And, one of my staff people said there's never more than 5 feet between me and disaster, and that's the distance from my foot to my mouth, right? And I'll say things sometimes without thinking it all the way through, and I get myself into trouble. But I have been good at getting some people from private sector, from business, into government, and to convince them to spend 2 or 3 or 4 years of their life getting paid a lot less money and working just as hard to try and get back to the state. So Don Hunt was the CEO of one of the largest engineering firms. They built roads, they built bridges. I mean, he did engineering all over the United States. They had, I think, 17 locations, a big company. And he is bringing a level of organization and I think common sense to CDOT. And what I've asked him and what he's going to do is look at, how much tax money is generated in all the different parts of the state, and then how much are we getting on the roads. And I guarantee you what you'll see is that the metropolitan areas are spending more in the rural areas, as they should, right? Where do you think their food comes from, right? And you can't get food to market if you don't have an infrastructure to move stuff around. So, well, it's a fact, right?
How come we've had 2 jobs pulled then? Because there was one project on 160 through Kim that was to be roto-milled and 1.5 inches new on top. That got pulled.
And is the road in bad condition? Well, I haven't seen it.
Run it. You'll find tomorrow.
Oh, am I going to drive on that road tomorrow?
Yes.
Great.
Trinidad.
Oh, tonight. I'm going to Trinidad tonight. So I will, and you can ask, is Will here? Is Will Shaffroth still here?
Not here.
So I have a young staffer. Everywhere I go, everywhere, he's with me. And we have a notebook in the car where I look at the road quality of every place we go.
Good.
And try to monitor. Because a lot of times, they'll sometimes replace roads just because they're 25 years old, but they're perfectly smooth. So it's a little bit kind of what my grandfather used to say was damned if you do and damned if you don't. But we've got to have a reasonableness towards those decisions. And Don Hunt, whatever else you may say, he is objective. He doesn't play politics. I honestly don't know whether he's a Democrat or a Republican. I never asked him. But he is working as hard as he can to try. And one of the things he is very, very worried about, in the next 3 or 4 years, all the vehicles, the sedans, the pickup trucks, everything's going to start getting a lot better mileage. So it's a good thing. You're going to save money. You won't spend as much money on fuel, but the money that we get to fix roads and to fix bridges is going to go down. And as a state, we better start thinking about what we're going to do, because it isn't going to be easy. And I don't have an easy solution. I don't have some simple solution for this thing. But if we want to keep our roads in any kind of condition that our infrastructure stays even with where it is, we're going to have to find some other sources of money. What else? Oh, come on. You got to be madder at stuff. Here and then you.
I'm Stacey Bishop. I'm a physician assistant here at Back County. My concern that I would like for the state to look into, and I know it comes back to the money issue, is the sorry state of our mental health services. I mean, we have such poor, and it's just the overall ability to handle mental health services. I mean, we're out here in the middle of nowhere, and we have a very high per capita number of mental health patients, and routinely they go into crisis, they show up in our ER. We're not a mental health facility, and we have people come out, the counselors come out, and say, yes, they need admitted, And they call, and they call, and they call, and they call, and there are no beds anywhere to be had. And I know Colorado ranks, the last time I checked, Colorado ranks towards the bottom of mental health services among all the states. And I think that's really sad.
Well, and you're exactly right, but what we did last session, and it's not just Colorado, the whole country, you know, back in the 60s and the 70s, we locked everyone up. And it was just easier. We put them in these huge institutions, even people that could live on their own, much less expensively, right? They wouldn't need as much taxpayer dollars. They need some support, but we locked everybody up. The pendulum swung, as often happens, swung the other way, and we just closed all those institutions. We put everybody out on the street. We had essentially no capacity to deal with people that really did need to be supported in a more intensive way. And I, you know, well, one of the things we did last session was we pushed about $21 million a year, and this was, we were at 44th. This is going to get us up to 37th, 38th. But I think as that money comes on stream in the coming year, you'll find a lot of that is oriented, the majority of it is oriented to rural mental health facilities. Crisis hotlines man 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there are going to be a number, I think there are going to be 5 regional, you know, crisis centers. So yours is probably going to be in Trinidad, or it probably will not be right here, but it'll be a lot closer than what you've had to deal with.
But they are, and those are inpatient?
Those are inpatient?
Facilities.
Yep, that's my understanding. Good question over here.
Yeah, thanks, Governor, for being here to talk to us. My name is Peter Dawson. I'm a commissioner here in Back County. As we see the development of the exchanges for the health care deal and the expansion of Medicaid and everything, we're at the same time seeing a constant eroding and backstepping on the legislation from Washington, D.C. You know, we're expected to implement this at the county level and make it all work. For the next 3 years, is it, or 2 years, the federal government is supposed to cover 100% of the cost.
5 years.
No,
I think it's 2018.
It ratchets down to like 90% after 5 years, I believe. But
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but
I think you're right.
my point is, there's already been talk of Washington, D.C. reneging on part of that percentage of the stuff they cover, you know, with an eroding and just the whole thing in Washington basically falling apart. At what point do we take these exchanges, and if we have to at some point put money into it to keep the Medicaid expansion, to keep the exchanges going, and at some point, if it keeps going the way it is, we'll have to be putting money into subsidizing the people that are signed up on the exchanges too. At what point do we, I guess, cut bait and start introducing some more principles in there that let the insurance companies operate a little more freely and without all the federal dictates? Or is there a point in your mind where that comes?
Well, I think we look at what if the federal government changes its commitments to us based on we made investments of our own based on those commitments, we've got really bigger problems. And I think when we get to that point, if that happens, we'll have to make some drastic decisions. In the meantime, and I was not someone who went out and, you know, jumped up and down for the, you know, the Affordable Care Act, right? I thought, you know, Obamacare, anything that takes 2,700 pages is going to be filled with problems. And that's clearly going to be the case. But I will tell you, talk to any small business person in my business, we were one of the few restaurants, we paid half the health care for our employees if they paid the other half. And we saw the bill for both sides go up 10 or 15% year after year after year after year with no one ever coming up with a solution. I don't know if this is the solution I would have chosen, but it is going to shake things up. You know, 4 years ago, here's a fact that I learned 2 weeks ago. 4 years ago, 10% of the doctors in the United States of America use technology for their patient records or for prescriptions. 90% of them still used all paper. 80% of the hospitals used all paper for medical records and prescriptions. So think about it in paper. I mean, what other industry in the modern world is not using technology? right? Well, that's now 50% of the doctors are using digital, computers of one sort or another. Spent all this time trying to make sure people get covered so we don't spend all the money of treating people in the emergency room. This country, and I tell you, this state's going to do it, is focus on how do we control costs, right? And a full court press saying we are going to do everything we can to go to that low-hanging fruit. And some of it's, I'm not saying that, every family is going to make their own decisions. But I can't tell you how many people, my mom, when I was first running for mayor, and she took care of her mom. Her mom had a stroke, and for 8 years, my mother went and 3 times a week went and changed bedpans and took care of my mom, my grandmother. She was an invalid. And it drove my mother crazy because her mother had raised the family through the Depression, was the toughest, most self-reliant, independent woman she'd ever met, and she was basically, she was unhappy and bitter to be alive. And my mom said, don't ever let that happen. When I was running, she had a massive stroke. We all went back. She was in the hospital, and we got to have dinner with her, and then she was back in the coma, and the doctors came and they said, well, we're going to go up through her thigh, and we're going to get those blood clots out of her brain, and it's going to take about 6 months to recover, but we think there's a 60%, maybe a 65% chance she'll get 60 or 65% of her facilities back, right? And we looked at them like they were, we said, I got 2 sisters and a brother, we all looked at each other, we didn't even have to discuss it. We said, no, we don't, and they said, no, it won't cost you a penny. She's on Medicare. Don't worry about that. We said, no, that has nothing to do with who's paying. She wouldn't want to live like that. She would want to spend 6 months and then come out of the state where someone's always taking care of her. She just wouldn't want to live that way. She had that discussion. There are, thousands and thousands of people like that really don't want to live in a state. I'm not saying government should ever have anything to do with this decision, but we should let people have the information. They can make wise decisions on how we administer healthcare. And there's 50 other different examples like that where we are spending huge amounts of money and we do not give people what they really want, right? We don't do anything like close to what we should be doing on prevention, right? How do we motivate people to eat better food, to be more active, to take better care of themselves?
Yeah.
Governor, I'm John George. I live about 25 miles west of here. I'm glad you talked about facts. Sir, I would like to hand you some pictures here of facts of what these rodents are doing for our state and our county. There's pictures here of where these things are so thick and so many of them, they're just literally ruining the land.
Prairie dogs?
If you had been here, we're glad you're finally here, but really you're about a year late from what we really needed some help with. There's been a lot of cattle with the market already because of the drought. But these prairie dogs, I tell you, they're just taking over the country.
And are they on state land or are they in federal land?
All of it, private, state, federal. Where I live, I'm completely surrounded by either federal land or these environmental people out of Denver. And I'm completely surrounded. They're just coming in. We've had meetings all spring trying to get something done with them, with the Forest Service, Division of Wildlife, Doris Morgan's came to some of them. And everybody will admit, oh, they're a problem, but there's nobody there, there's no laws in place to do anything with them.
So what are your, so should we try to get the legislature, could you have a state law requiring landowners to get rid of pests like that?
Well, personally, I think that'd be a good start myself.
I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm still relatively new to state politics, so I'm not sure whether that's doable or not. But I'll certainly have to look into it. I mean, that's just something that I don't know a lot about. Yeah.
Governor Hickenlooper, we really need a stronger voice and more advocacy for the rural school districts. Most of my career has been in larger urban districts, and moving out here, I've just been shocked at the amount of obstacles and adversity and the access to resources to be able to provide the same quality education so our students can be competitive as it would against Cherry Creek or Jeffco district.
No, I understand full well the challenges on rural. It's all over the state. The rural districts are smaller, and it's more difficult to pass mill levy increases to get additional resources, which Cherry Creek School does on a regular basis. They're always raising their property taxes because, you know, they can get away with it. The community can afford it. You know, Mike Johnson, the state senator, has this school reform initiative that's going to be on the ballot, and it's got a tax increase, and I'm going to guess there's not too many people in this room that are going to want to tolerate that or support it. But I will tell you that the 50 school districts that benefit the most from that tax increase are all rural school districts. Long before Denver or Colorado Springs or any of the urban districts, they get a disproportionate benefit of the money. And a lot of that money comes from, you know, some of the other urban school districts that get a disproportionately lower benefit. That's one way to look at it. When you do the financing, make sure that more money goes into the rural economies, into the rural school districts. Are you guys aware of Pedal the Plains? Have you heard about it yet? So that was the one thing when I was first campaigning. It was actually I was in Sterling, and I spent a night there, and they have 4 baseball fields. All the home plates come together, and they have barbecue pits. And every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, it seemed like the whole county was out there watching their kids play, and they go from game to game, and all 4 games are going on. And I'd never seen anything like that, right? It reminded me of when I was a kid. So anyway, I came out of that, and we came up with this idea that, you know, you've heard about Ride the Rockies, where you go to 10 passes, so Pedal the Plains is the bike ride, the bike tour for the rest of us, right? It's out here in the Eastern Plains. We did the first one last year up in Northeast Colorado. Started in, I think, Yuma, went to Ray, then Burlington, back up to Yuma. We had over 1,000 people from Colorado Springs, from Denver, from Fort Collins, that came out and rode their bikes through, and they did. You know, they had petting zoos along the way so people could see and actually touch livestock. I mean, it sounds weird to you guys, but a lot of these folks are third generation in urban areas. They've never been around animals. They've never seen where their food comes from. And without every single person, I was there all 3 days, every single person on that ride came away saying, I had no idea that this existed. I love this life. I'm aware of at least one person who actually moved, actually wasn't to Yuma, but up north of Yuma, up to Sterling, and loves it, right? And part of this Pedal the Plains thing, and you guys are, you know, it's going to start in Eads and then go to Lamar, and then I think La Junta, did I get that right? But it's a chance to let people see your part of the world. And they're obviously going to look for a lot of help and support on this. But this is, you talk about bridging the divides between, you know, the kind of urban front range and the suburban front range and rural areas, and let people appreciate it. One of the toughest things I had when I was mayor Denver appoints the 5 people that run Denver Water. And so, you know, again, I grew up, my mom was, you know, she would wash tinfoil and saran wrap and tape it to the refrigerator door. She grew up in the Depression and was very, very frugal. And, you know, so we start with a conservation attitude. I would appoint only commissioners to the Denver Water Board who were absolutely committed to do water conservation 100%. And in 5 years, we cut the per capita consumption of water by Denver residents by 20%. That's more than any major city in the history of the United States has ever done. And, you know, of course, if you're selling 20% less water, and you've still got to buy pumps and pipes and all the same infrastructure, that means you have to charge 20% more for the water that you're selling. And I had all these residents coming in and saying, our water bills have never gone up this much. How dare you raise the price of water it's our water? Who do you think you are? And in every case, this happened almost once a week, I would say, you know, I'm not sure, I don't care what the law says, but in many ways, I think this water is Colorado's water. And the highest and best use is we have a secure, sustainable source of food right in our backyard, and they need that water more than we do it, than you need for your grass, right? And if the only way we're ever going to get people to conserve is to raise the price, that's one way to do it, right? And it's to talk about conservation and make it easy for residents to do that. And they're still doing that. Now we're trying to do that in Colorado Springs, in Fort Collins. But that relationship between, you know, the rural areas and the suburban and urban areas, I mean, that's the kind of attitude. And you know what, when I said that to those people, not one person ever fought back, right? When I said, you know, in the end, this makes Denver a better place, is to have a stronger rural Colorado, nobody ever argued. No one ever taken the time to talk to them about it. And I think that's part of what Pedal the Plains is going to do, is allow more people to experience what you know, some of the beauty of your existence that you guys, you know, you get to experience every day.
I have a question.
Yep.
Meeting my dad.
Oh, that's so great.
It is great. I'm also secretary of the Colorado Dental Association, and one thing that we see is legislature being introduced to the state of Colorado that has to do with bringing in mid-level dental providers. And that could be anybody 18 months out of high school that could do extractions, things like that. And they're using examples of rural communities of where this would benefit, could be beneficial, which to me just kind of says that, you know, maybe we don't deserve the same care as people in the urban areas. So we are fighting this as a dental team ourselves and also as the Colorado Dental Association. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on that.
Well, it's the first, I mean, this is why I come on these trips, is to find that's the first I've heard of that bias, which, you know, I think as a state, you want to set a consistent standard of care for everybody. And it's going to be harder, I mean, as you know, it's probably harder to get dentists if you didn't grow up here, it's not a place you might not be, for many people, the first choice. But one way, if you're going to try and get consistent standards, is you've got to get people to understand the other ways of life, right? Now I'm right back to pedal the plains and making sure that people from the urban areas have got to be able to understand what the challenges are, and dentistry is only one of them, right? You go down almost every qualification of medical care. There are more challenges in rural areas than there are in urban areas, right? At the same time, in rural areas, you get a couple bad years of drought, and you know people are trying to figure out a way to put seed in the ground. They're maybe not going to go to a dentist for a year, right? I mean, I don't know how. You know, this afternoon, I was with a rancher who described a few days ago watching, you know, a rainstorm coming across the plains, and he was feeling so happy, and he just knew it was going to be a big difference, and he was finally getting some he had rain a couple days before, this was going to be another good storm, and the storm in the middle of the storm turned to hail, and he lost 3/4 of his crop. I don't know how, and he was talking about it 3 days ago, right? He's got insurance, so he'll get enough money until we can but he lost all his profit. He spent the whole year building. I don't know how you can do it, right? How you can invest yourself that hard to something like that and have in one snap, in 10 minutes, have it go away. You know, I take my hat off to the persistence and, you know, I always tell kids, the most important thing in success is work hard, be nice, and never quit. And I think down here that quit is something that allows you to succeed. Anyway, I'm happy to help define that, you know, create what that protocol is of what quality healthcare looks like. And we should have the same standards everywhere.
We have time for about one more question.
Okay. Yeah.
Governor Hickenlooper, my name is Jim Hargis. I'm a lifelong resident of Baca County. My question or the problem in the answering of this is probably above and beyond anything you could come up with. About 20 years ago, I had a fellow employee explain to me the fair tax or the flat tax. The more I thought about it, I think it is a great idea whose time has come in lieu of the latest IRS scandal. What are your feelings on this fair tax or flat tax?
So, fair tax, flat tax, the same thing, right?
Same thing?
Yeah. The tricky part about it is how you get there, right? And I don't have a bias against it one way or the other or for it. I generally try to, if possible, stay clear. You know, one of the things, I have a guy who's very successful, businessman, and he's very interested. He thinks we can lower the sales tax dramatically if we taxed everything, right? If we taxed services. So you go to an accountant or a lawyer, that those guys should all pay taxes. Sounds like a good idea. Take your sales tax, drop it in half. Maybe you can drop it to 1% until you talk to the lawyers, right? Until you talk to the people that are affected. That's what, I think it's interesting to talk philosophically about what a flat tax would look like. But how high would it be, right? If you talk to the people that are making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year and struggling to make ends meet, paying taxes, if there's a flat tax, so all the wealthy people, and you know, I had a few really good years in the restaurant business. It's a hard business, in a funny way, not dissimilar from ranching in the sense that some days you open a restaurant and it's great, it's a home run for a few years. Sometimes you open it and you can lose a lot of money in a very short amount of time. But on those years where I did very well, if everyone's paying a fat tax, that means the people that are paying much less would have to pay more. If I'm going to get a big discount.
Not the way I understand it. It was explained to me a flat tax would be like somewhere between 17 and 22 cents on the dollar, and you would be taxed as you spend it, not on what you earn, but as you spend it.
Right. So cheapskates like me would actually get out of that real cheap.
Some people would.
Right. No, I got that. And I don't know enough about it to be. This is exactly where the 5 feet between me and disaster is. I start giving an opinion on something I don't know enough about. So I will go back and try and research it. If it's something like that, is part of it getting rid of all the deductions? And saying, all right, we're not going to have any more deductions, we're just going to have a flat tax. Is that part of it?
More or less, yes.
Because that does seem to make more sense, right? But again, you've got all these industries, like the mortgage industry or the homeowners industry, the real estate agency. You're going to take away the home deduction, which you probably need to do that. That would be very difficult. Not that you couldn't do it, but I think it would take a lot of work. Just, talk to your local real estate agents and see what they think about it. The one thing I do see, the longer I'm in this job, is how hard it is to really change things that from the surface look wrong. And they don't seem to make sense. And when you start getting into the details of what you've got to do, everyone's got a constituency, they've all got lobbyists, they're all working their brains out to protect what their little bit is. And you've got to figure out some way of balancing out those self-interests, right? It's what our founding fathers were so good at, right? They made sure they were all contradictory and they kind of neutralized themselves to a large extent. Anyway, I apologize for having to run off. You can see here I'm getting a little hoarse. I'm probably getting some sort of flu or something. You don't want to get anywhere near me. Thank you all for your time. Thank you. Do support Petaluma Plains. I think it's got great potential to help the Eastern Plains. I think over time, 5 years, 10 years from now, we could have 10,000 people a year going through this part of the state. And a lot of them are going to want to come back and stay, or at least come back and be tourists. So anyway, thank you all. I realize you guys are busy. I am. Thank you for your time.